Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani. In this episode, the topic is emotional intelligence. Improve your self-awareness to increase your leadership success. I'm going to share with you two more specific emotional intelligence skills that you can practice and improve over time. This is the second episode in a series covering all 15 of the skills that make up emotional intelligence. So if you missed the first episode, I really encourage you to go back and listen to it because I share a few fascinating facts about the impact that emotional intelligence can have on your career, along with some practical tips for how you can get started with the very first skill, which was self-regard. You can find the first episode at thesuccesstalkshow.com or in iTunes, whichever you prefer. And if you'd like to download the list of all 15 skills, you can go to my website, successcompassstrategies.com/emotional-intelligence. There's a few other things you can download there too. I'll keep expanding that page as we go through the series. So let's dig in. The two skills that I'm going to share with you in this episode are emotional self-awareness and emotional expression. Let's get started with emotional awareness. You really need to master this one skill to be effective in all the other areas of emotional intelligence. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Like you need to be aware of what your emotions are and able, before you can actually do anything about it. So it's the ability to recognize your feelings and differentiate between them. It's knowing why you're feeling this way and, just as important, recognizing the impact these emotions might have on the people around you. Now, before I go into tips and telling you how you can really think about this more for yourself, I want to share a quick story with you about, it was really a turning point for when I started to pay attention to this. For most of my career, I managed all types of support services within technology. 15 of those years were in financial services. And, I have to say, being a female in a mostly male environment, I certainly didn't want to be seen as emotional, right? I mean, that was, if someone talked about your moods or emotions, that wasn't a good thing. So, even if the data center was going up in flames, I wanted to be the one who was calm, organized, in control. I thought it came naturally to me. I was, complimented if people saw me that way. But needless to say, I did always try to suppress any type of emotion and just deny it and just say, oh no, I'm not moody. I'm not emotional. That's not me. So this whole topic of emotional intelligence has really been fascinating to me. So I still remember one specific incident that was a turning point for me when I realized how I might be out of touch with understanding, recognizing my emotions and how they might impact other people. My boss had asked me to relocate to Singapore. This was several years ago. And within a few months, he wanted me to relocate to the other side of the world. I was living in Boston at the time. And he wanted me to build out our client services organization across the region, really build out the bench strength for talent and how we supported our clients and so on. And when he first approached me about it, I have to admit, I wasn't too keen on going. Prior to that, my father had passed away, my mother was living alone, and I really felt responsible for making sure she was okay. My life was starting to get back on track in terms of, where I lived and my lifestyle, and I was feeling really good and really happy, really content, and really feeling responsible for making sure I was checking in and driving up to see my mother at her house, my former home, for quite a long time. I went up there a lot. So if I took this assignment, the company said they'd fly me home once every 12 months. And at the time, I politely suggested they ask someone else to take on the role. And they said, no, we really want you to go. Okay, So one day, while I was still trying to decide whether or not I would say yes, one of my own directors came over to my desk to discuss an issue with me. And again, I thought it was calm, cool, collected. Nobody really knew what was happening. And, I thought I'm a cool cucumber, right? So at one point he said, "Donna, you look so upset. Maybe you should go home for the rest of the day." What? I guess it wasn't as calm, cool, and collected as I thought I was. I didn't think anyone would notice. Okay, surprise, people notice, right? If you've got something going on, it could be personal, professional. You need to recognize what are the emotions you're feeling, right? Don't deny them. What's causing them? And how might they be impacting the people around you? So in that instance, over a couple of weeks, people could see, they didn't really know why, they didn't really understand what was happening with me, but they could see that I was either sad, stressed, unhappy. They could see these emotions. Now, people around you, if they don't know what's going on, they start to wonder, what's the matter with her? What's going on? So no matter what you think, your emotions are having an effect on the people around you. And when you're a senior leader in the organization, they not only notice, but it does have an effect on them. Somehow, some way, it impacts the interactions that you have with them. Okay. So that was kind of a turning point for me, not to stick my head in the sand and think that, nobody's really going to notice, because they do. So now imagine a few different scenarios. Maybe for yourself, you might be thinking about a member of your team that you need to have a difficult conversation with. It could be worst case, you need to put somebody on a performance plan. Maybe you have to terminate employment for someone, and you may have a whole range of emotions about this conversation. Or your boss maybe has just given you feedback that you absolutely didn't want to hear. You're feeling angry, frustrated, resentful. Or a colleague has been given the promotion that you were hoping to get. Any of these scenarios, I'm not suggesting these are happening to you right this minute, but I've talked to a lot of my clients, and these are things that everybody in a leadership role faces more frequently than they'd care to admit. But any of these scenarios could trigger emotions that are completely natural. The key is to recognize how these emotions may affect the people that are around you. So if you're feeling frustrated, disappointed, resentful, angry, or, on the positive side, you could be feeling, giddy and excited, right, about something good that happened, but how are you going to handle it? So simply pause for a few seconds to recognize the emotions and make a deliberate choice for how you want to behave. If you don't do this, you run the risk of being seen as uncooperative, difficult to deal with, disagreeable, condescending, demeaning, irritable. And, it all depends on how these emotions that you're feeling, how they spill out of you. It may be unintentional, but people don't know what's happening with you. So when they see you acting this way, they're either going to, if they're people you work with, they may see you as an emotional volcano, and they'll run the other way when they see you coming. Can you think of somebody you work with who's like that? You think, oh my God, I don't want to have to approach him or her with a question because, it's never worth the aggravation. I have seen this and heard this for so long about so many people, especially the higher up you go, and it can really affect your reputation, your impact, and your effectiveness, right? So this is why the whole rest of emotional intelligence really stems on increasing how self-aware you are with your emotions. Okay, so I want to share with you 3 simple tips to increase your emotional self-awareness. Tip number 1, make a list of the specific emotions that you tend to be more aware of and the situations that trigger them. You're going to write this down for yourself, so be honest. Is it, you don't really like getting feedback from other people? If it's not positive feedback, you don't react well, you get defensive, you never thank them and embrace that feedback, you get kind of ticked off. Or it could be frustration. There's just somebody or a couple of people that just don't respond to you quickly enough. You get really frustrated. It intensifies. You get, it starts to show up in how you interact with them. But whatever it is, we all have triggers or tipping points for what really gets under our skin. Okay, so make a list of the specific emotions you tend to be more aware of and what's triggering them. Because once you have that self-awareness, now you can start to figure out how do you want to handle it going forward. Tip number 2, make a list of the people who are most likely to trigger those feelings. We all have people we work with who push our buttons. Once you admit this, you can determine how you want to control your reaction. For example, I just mentioned there may be somebody you work with where every time they ask you for something, the minute they approach you, you can just feel the hair standing up on the back of your neck, or you get a pit in your stomach. Every time you have an interaction with them, before they even open their mouth, it's already triggered some feelings. So the first step to self-awareness is admit it, write it down. Who are they? And then you can figure out what do you want to do about it. Okay. Tip number 3, list the ways these feelings might be showing up in your body and how you might experience them. So, for example, I'll just tell you for myself, when I'm angry, I instantly feel my face getting hot. And I always laugh about my Irish temper. I, really work hard not to show it. I don't think I've ever been a hothead in the office, but I can actually feel my face getting warm. And so that's just an example of how it shows up. Now, how does it show up for you? If you're feeling nervous or insecure, or again, somebody's telling you something you don't want to hear, can you feel the pit in your stomach? Do you feel jittery? What happens? Because when you can tune into how that shows up in your body, it's just a signal, it's a clue, it's a red flag. Uh-oh, I can feel it happening, right? It's that pausing for those couple of moments to realize what's happening so that you then can determine how you want to act. Like, well, anytime I feel this, I can feel myself getting angry. Take a deep breath. I'm going to say, thank you for the feedback. Let me think about it. But you're going to think about it so that you don't just blow off steam, right? Because that's not going to help you build productive relationships, right? So once you learn to pinpoint it, then you can determine how you want to pay attention to those signals and how you want to respond. Now, as I mentioned in the first episode of this series, if you take the online emotional intelligence assessment, you can actually get a score for this skill. So you can see, based on your own self-assessment, or maybe even the feedback from others, how good are you at emotional self-awareness? It's a skill. Now, it could be you've got this completely under control. It's really a strong point for you. It's not a problem. And maybe these tips I'm sharing with you are just, small suggestions that you'll, keep in mind, but it's not something that you need to focus 100% on because, maybe you're doing okay. But if you're curious, then jump over to my website, successcompassstrategies.com/emotional intelligence. And there you'll see a sample report, which would tell you what would it look like if you did take the assessment. And if you do this leadership report, it will show you how you compare to the best executives, right? It could be that your emotional self-awareness is right on target with the best, right? That's just one way to find out. So let's switch to the next skill. I want to talk about emotional expression. Now, it's really how you come across to others. Now, this I find so interesting. Studies have shown that when it comes to information that people take in, they retain 7% of your words, 38% the tone of your voice, and 55% your body language. So do these numbers surprise you? I admit it, when I first heard these, I found them a bit surprising. You're carefully trying to choose your words, but that's really only 7% of what people remember about what you're saying. So this is really interesting to me. And it reminded me of a Maya Angelou quote that I'd heard a long time ago. And the quote is, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And that's a great quote because it's a reminder of how important this particular skill is. It's really how you're coming across. The words you said are just a piece of it, okay? Let's look at a possible scenario. Imagine you're sitting in an audience listening to a presentation and the presenter is clearly nervous, right? Instead of speaking with confidence, they're stammering and they're stumbling over their words. Instead of appearing relaxed and eager to share their expertise, they're clutching their notes and kind of pacing awkwardly. And the overall impression they're making on you is really only partially the words they're saying, right? It's the tone of voice and body language that's making that big impression on you. And the same is true for all of your own interactions. If you want to be seen as an effective and confident leader who's highly respected and trusted, you absolutely need to pay attention to how you're coming across in all your interactions. It doesn't matter whether it's your team, your colleagues, maybe senior executives at your company, your clients, you will be shaping their impression of you in every moment. So I want to give you 2 tips for this. Tip number 1, Identify a recent, or I should say this is an exercise, right? But identify a recent interaction at work that didn't go as well as you would have liked. What words did you use? What was your tone of voice? What could your body language have been conveying, right? So this is an exercise to help you gain a little more awareness on how you're expressing yourself. So maybe you just write down the situation, the words you said, your tone of voice, your body language, okay? Think about it. What didn't go as well as you would have liked? Is it possible that you were, sitting at your desk, not really paying as much attention? You were, distracted. You had your arms crossed. You came across as defensive. What was it? Or they told you something you didn't want to hear and you jumped down their throat. You realized that you were maybe a little hasty in what you said. Now, you and I have probably seen this lots of times in the workplace, and I certainly have, and like I said, in a technology organization, when there's problems, people can, react in all kinds of ways. So that's the first tip. And it's really an exercise because you could do this. If this is something you really want to improve, you may want to do this, at the end of every week. Think about it. What went well? What didn't? Words versus tone of voice and body language. It's to really increase not only your self-awareness, but it's to prepare you so the next time there's those same triggers, you can handle them more effectively, right? Make sense? Now, the next tip is to ask a colleague you trust for feedback after an interaction. Now, this could be, a meeting that you're both in. Maybe it's a regular ongoing meeting, or maybe it's a presentation that you're giving. But it's best to seek out this feedback immediately after whatever the interaction is, while it's fresh in their mind and fresh in your mind. Now, this one I would have to say is the most important thing you can do. You might be in a meeting, expressing your ideas. Maybe you're facilitating the meeting, you're trying to bring people to consensus, whatever the situation is. Right after the meeting, speak with somebody, and you might even, and it's best if you ask them ahead of time. Say, this is a really important meeting. It's going to be a tough subject. Would really love to get your feedback afterwards on what I did well and where I could improve. And that way they're paying a little bit more attention to your style, your interaction, how you're communicating. Then afterwards, debrief with them for a few minutes. Now, I have done this both as the giver and receiver of feedback for many years, and this is really the best way when it's real time, because it's a real situation, it's fresh in your mind, and it's something tangible. Okay, so that's really the most important tip I can give you on this one. So that is all I wanted to cover with you today with these two specific skills. In this episode, we covered emotional self-awareness and emotional expression, both of which are fundamental to how you interact with others, and it forms the basis of your relationships, your reputation, and what you're able to accomplish. So if you found this information helpful, I invite you to click on the iTunes tab for ratings and reviews to provide feedback. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you for listening and have a great day.